you can typically hire somebody who is a year or younger in the business, as long as they're coachable and teachable.
Welcome back to the Outsourcing and Scaling Show. My guest today is John Ferguson. John, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. For those of you who don't know, for the past 18 years, John has been in high-ticket sales design, working with clients like Rich Dad LLC in 2006 to Laura Langmeyer's Live It Out Loud and many more. Taking previously hidden sales methods out from behind the big current, bringing them into the streets so sales pros can level up their abilities. He designs and creates and implements premium price coaching, mentoring, masterminds, and courses, offering into a sales flow that his clients begging to buy from the expert. We're going to talk all about that. First, let's take a gigantic step back. What were you like growing up? Were you a straight A student? Were you a rebel? Did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
I didn't know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur until I saw and found out that my father had been laid off 7 times before I was 17. I had no idea that the actual entrepreneurial world worked or how it worked. My father worked 2 to sometimes 3 jobs every single year. We'd clean churches on Saturdays to kind of make things work. We lived with my grandmother probably for that entire time until I was about 17. So in school, we moved around, like middle school to high school, back to different different schools. So I didn't really have, that core group of friends that I could actually latch onto because I was always moving around, and that caused some issues. And I have dyslexia. So I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was 8, which reading and writing and, all that was just kind of rough for me. Everything was upside down, backwards. Math I was okay with, but everything else that actually, I guess, mattered in school, my grades were about C average. It wasn't nothing to shake a stick at.
Right. So what was your first real entrepreneurial endeavor in the real world?
So I kind of laugh, and maybe this isn't entrepreneurial for everybody, but my very first opportunity was real estate investing, and I actually started off in an MLM that taught real estate investing.
Interesting.
That was probably my first venture into it. I purchased a program online, back then, infomercial, that was $25 and bought the package, and I started out just trying my wealth into real estate investing because I like what they were saying on the infomercial. I was up late at night, 2 a.m., bawling my eyes out because I was capped out at where I was frustrated, and I was facing a layoff. And so I didn't know how I was going to pay for my family. So I said, got to do something different.
Very interesting. And who was your first hire, and how did that go?
So my first hire was essentially a bird dog. So in that industry, you hire individuals that can go talk to people. And this is where I started to learn more about sales and selling and building relationships and how to ask specific questions. Because when you go into somebody's house, when they're about to lose their home, you have to have a specific skill set. And in the beginning, I just hired people from, the newspaper and Craigslist and thought, okay, here's the script. Here's what you got to go do. And I started to outsource that way. But it turned into be a fiasco. And I was going through and turning over so many people that I just started doing it myself. It was like, gosh, if it is to be, it's going to be up to me. So that was tough.
Interesting. So how did you get into high ticket sales?
So high ticket sales came around when I actually had lost a lot of my real estate business. I had done really well. I had brought on some partnerships, and I built some relationships that tore things apart. I actually went through a foreclosure with one of our rental properties, the first rental that we had purchased. We had a lot of deals that we were losing, and it took us some time to really capture and recapture our wealth. And so I ended up living in my parents' basement. Like, I started to just kind of downfall. And for 6 months, I hid. Like, I was literally in an unfinished basement in Linden, Utah, this small little town outside of Provo, Utah, for if any of your listeners know where that is. And I was stuck. And I got a phone call one day and said, hey, look, you've got some really good sales skills. I want you to come try working with this company. And at the time, it was a company called Wealth Intelligence Academy, owned and operated by Russ Whitney out of Cape Coral, Florida. He's an old school real estate investor, kind of guru guy, one of the first. And at the time, I didn't even know that world existed. I didn't know high ticket sales was a thing. I didn't know coaching was a thing until I got into this call center and I saw the results that were happening, and I had to get in. And so that was my first experience to see that you could actually sell something over the phone and make $65,000. You could close giant ticket sales. That was pretty awesome. And all these guys at first were outsourced, right? They were brought in from, they had some at-home sales guys. They had some people in the office. And so depending on what their needs were, they were either outsourcing salespeople or they had in-house. And so I started to see the different realm that caused, and I was addicted to that point.
Very interesting. So how does someone go about building a really good high-ticket sales program?
So the first thing is you have to understand your marketing, right? And so if somebody doesn't understand their messaging and they try to get closers on the phone, it's going to be a broken message. We see it all the time where the message on the back end doesn't meet the marketing. And it's always been kind of that, sales versus marketing sometimes. And if the two don't talk to each other, if you don't keep it congruent, then you're going to have challenges. On the back end, you'll have over-promising and under-delivering. And that's what the guru will feel or the expert will feel. But really, it's just a missed message. On the front end, people will be coming in and not really understanding why they're being called for coaching or masterminds or mentoring. So if that is broken, then you have a bad process. And so you have to fix that. So the first thing is understanding where your people are at, where they're going along that road of, a lot of people use the term value ladder, or they're, upselling their products, their coaching, masterminds, higher ticket products. They really have to understand that model before they can go in and start building out a high-end coaching platform. That's probably the first step.
And what's the next step?
So after that, you would come in and we would want to design out exactly what your scripting is. Like, what are you selling? Is it going to be coaching? And what's the fulfillment of that thing? Because it's all about how you get people to qualify to earn the right to buy the product versus the product selling itself. And so you have to reverse the sales process in order for the clients to earn essentially the right to own what you're selling. And so at that point, we would come in and you would want to design out your scripting. Is it a 1 call, 2 call, 3 call? Is it over 2 days? Is it a product and price point that you can hop on the phone and discuss exactly what the details are and sell the person? Again, back to marketing, what's the messaging? Have they been in a product that you have sold them before? And how good is that lead? Have they paid you $2,000 to $3,000 to $5,000 to $10,000 in the past? And now you're upgrading them to the next level. So there's a lot of different intricacies that we want to iron out before we go into, hey, let's just go hire a closer. Right? I know a lot of influencers want to get off the phones because typically they're the ones who are selling their people, and that causes some friction in their business. And so for them to be able to trust the process, they have to, of hiring somebody or outsourcing to, let's say, a closer or a salesperson, they have to make sure that that message is married to that sales process, design your scripting around that, and then a good closer should be able to take on that scripting and close sales with integrity of what you're offering.
Interesting. Where do you see people go wrong when they're creating a high-ticket program?
They try to close the sales themselves. They lose a lot of integrity with the client. And I know in the beginning, someone who's not in the $2 to $8 million revenue range may not have the revenue to outsource to salespeople. The other thing too is trusting too early that the salesperson is prepared and has the skill set to close their sales. The third thing is not talking. It's a breakdown in communication. If you're hiring a salesperson that you think, what I see a lot of is, salespeople are a dime a dozen. You can pick them up on any street corner. Well, sure, you can, and there's a lot of salespeople out there. But if you want the right type of salesperson that's going to lend credibility to your business, you want to spend some time interviewing that person. And then once you find the right person, the right fit, make sure that they understand the messaging. One of the first things I make sure all of our closers have is access to all of the training. Not that they're going to go through it, but they have access to all the training. They get an email. They're on the email list, so they're seeing and reading the emails that are going out to the prospects. They're in every webinar. They know the webinar. They know the changes. And so it's maybe not that they're watching that all the time, but they have the transcript. They know the words that are being used. They know the language that's being said and the messaging that's being told. And then we're able to engineer that into the scripting so that you can then essentially speaking the same language to the client, so that that congruent message and the client feels more confident and comfortable, and you don't have to overpromise and underdeliver or deal with a lot of objections. When you're not using the same language, when you're not messaging the same as what these people have seen coming through, then it breaks down the messaging. I know that's a lot there, but those are some of the things that some people do wrong when they're trying to hire out closers, is they don't marry that message to the salesperson. And then it causes a lot of friction, a lot of breakdown, and the amount of sales you get go down. And then the closer has to sell because they want to feed their family. And so sometimes you'll find people overselling, right, the results. And so it just creates this mesh of just bad sales. And it's not one person's fault. It's kind of it's the entire soup, right? You put too much salt in and it's going to taste bad.
What other tips do you have for hiring salespeople? Because I think it's not only one of the hardest things to hire people and find good people for, but I know a lot of people listening have probably struggled with it before, and it can be frustrating to invest a lot of time in a salesperson, have it not work out. What tips do you have?
So the first thing that I would do is make sure that they had some experience on, if you're talking about somebody who's on the phone, you can typically hire somebody who is a year or younger in the business, as long as they're coachable and teachable. So I would take them through some line of questioning on if they have interest in what you're selling, right? I wouldn't hire somebody that didn't like, let's say, for instance, if I'm hiring somebody for the real estate world, I'm not going to hire someone that hates real estate but just loves cars. They've got no interest. They've got no desire to talk about it. They're not going to, that same energy won't come across on the phone if you're trying to hire for high ticket real estate courses. On that end, if you're looking to hire somebody who is really good at, like, say, search engine optimization or social media, but they're not online or they don't really care to be, but they think that they're a good closer, they're not going to have the same energy and desire to move forward. So having a really good interview process, probably 2 or 3 interviews, and then I'd make them send over kind of design a questionnaire of their hobbies, their likes, their dislikes. I know it kind of sounds funny to ask salespeople that in a corporate world, or even hiring a one-off salesperson that you're going to outsource your leads to. But it's so important to find out who these people are and to find out where their hobbies lie. And if they're not connecting, ask them why. Say, why do you want to get into this business? You'll find out why they're attracted to you. And if it's just because they want to make a 20-30% commission on selling because they think they're good, they'll struggle. And so I think that's probably the best thing to do, is take them through an interview process yourself. Like, find out who they are, what they've done, what their skill set is, and ultimately, are they coachable, and how well will they learn and apply the process if they like what you're doing. It's key.
I like it. What about just continuing that motivation over time? You find a good salesperson, your business is growing, you're adjusting, you're hiring more people. How do you keep people around and reduce turnover?
So the cool thing is with salespeople is, a lot of times, if you get really good salespeople who are professional, they want to continue, don't ever mess with the commission. Set the commission and the tone up front. Here's what the commission scale is. Set it in tone and don't mess with it. You can always go up in payment. You can't go down. And a lot of times I see where that loyalty of a salesperson breaks down is when the company adjusts because they maybe changed where they're gathering the leads. And so they've had to spend more, but then they have to find and cut costs somewhere else. They cut costs typically in the sales commission a lot of times. That will cause animosity on the sale. And then your closer or your sales team has to work a little bit more harder, or they start that process of, if I'm going to make X, I've got to close 2 or 3 more sales a week, but how much time do I have to do it? And so then they start to make mistakes or overpromise, or they rush the sales process and miss points that you want covered. So that would be the number one thing. Is I wouldn't mess with the commission scale. That's probably the biggest one. Number 2, stay consistently communicating with your sales team. Don't over manage, because a lot of salespeople, they get in a groove, they get their commitments down of what they're going to do. Don't overmanage the salesperson to where they feel suffocated. Give them some leeway to work things out. The third thing I would do is I'd have a touch point every single week, whether that's Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays. Touch base with the sales team, see how they're doing, make sure that they are actively dialing. So there are ways to do that without feeling like you're this micromanager, or where they feel like there's this thing hovering over them, this person who's going to, get them if they don't perform. And then help them set their own realistic goals for instance, like how many dials that they should be getting done in a day, to how many contacts should be done, to how many appointments should be set. Let them set the first goal and then help them go about 10, 20% above that for the week. Okay. And then start to build on that every single week. That they can't go below that. They have to continue to go above. So that's a stretch goal. But letting them set the goal, they're going to feel more connected to it than if I was to say, okay, look, no matter what, you have to do 100 dials a day. You have to have so many appointments. Again, for really good professional salespeople, they know the amount of money that they want to make, and they have that goal in line. So they'll kind of know what they have to do. So if you can communicate back and forth, it's a relationship. And I think those are some of the things that break down in most sales systems where salespeople leave, is they either feel overmanaged, that they're not valued because someone's forcing them to do goals, or their commission has been changed. That's probably the three things that will kick a salesperson out. So retaining that person is consistency.
What are some of the other key hires that you should be making in a high ticket business?
So key hires as far as in sales, or just high ticket business itself?
We talked about sales already. So outside of sales, well, what else do you see that your clients are hiring for, or that you guys are hiring for?
So several things that we'll be hiring for is compliance. So you want a compliance officer that deals with the TSR, which is the telesales rule. That's a FTC and SEC guidelines. And you want to take somebody through a compliance third-party phone call scripted out and recorded for your protection and your client's protection. That can be outsourced. You typically want somebody who is not a part of the company. You can hire a virtual assistant for that. You can have someone who is outside the organization that's not a part of that sales process, that essentially just reads a script and makes sure that everything is on the up and up, right? That's a big thing that a lot of people don't do because they think it's costly. But like with your services, your listeners that have access to Free Up, they should be able to, they can find that type of a person, I'm sure, that can help with that process. And then obviously when it comes down to lead management and organization, someone who can handle, all the notes, all the back ends, using the different systems and CRM that's being used. You have to run that system depending on how many leads you have coming in. But that checks and balances, that's somebody that typically is outsourced as well.
Awesome. What else did I miss? What else should people know about high ticket programs?
Man, with high ticket programs themselves, don't be afraid, right? If you're going through and you want to get into an influencer's product or influencer's program or a guru training, go through the process, right? Take the time, be patient with the process to get the details, understand what it is they're trying to help you with. We have sometimes people that ask, why are you asking me all of these questions to understand what I'm doing? All I want to do is go to this event. Well, not all events are right for all people. And so if someone is creating a process or you're looking to go into a process, make sure to be patient with that process. Patience is key.
I love it. This has been great. Where can people find out more about you, and what are you most excited about for the rest of the year?
So the cool thing is we've built a community on Facebook called Legendary Closers. If you just go to Facebook, you can jump into our community of high-ticket salespeople, influencers, coaches, experts that can jump in there and work together on sales. The goal is really having everybody work together. There's not one influencer or one expert, but all of what is being shared has to have proven results tied to it. They can find out a little bit more about me, the podcast. Your podcast will be on there at legendaryclosers.com. And when they join the group, we've got a program just for your listeners that's called Sick Fury, Sales Inception Questions that we're going to be giving away to any of your listeners that come into the group. We'll make sure to email them a link that they can get access to Sick Fury. It's a training that we put together to help people uncover internal buying triggers without a lot of friction and handling a ton of objections.
Awesome, man. Really appreciate you coming on. Have a great rest of the day.
You too. I appreciate you having me on as well.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Did you enjoy this content? If so, click like, leave us a comment, and subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you great content all about hiring.